Oh man, there are freaking monkeys just bouncing around everywhere on this planet right now. I'm watching monkeys throwing bombs and I'm seeing monkeys screwing up and blowing up buildings and they're just I mean, I thought the monkeys were supposed to be have some kind of a head on their shoulders, Ramon. Maybe those are monkeys in potential I'm looking at there and not full-fledged official monkeys yet. You're listening to Hundredth Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon,
What?
and and man, this world is we've stepped up a notch, I think, in the last week, Ramon, week and a half. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on tonight, and or this oh man 2012 2013 we all thought 2012 was the big thing, but I'll tell you what, 2013 is shaping up to be quite a year. So how you doing over there in Japan, Ramon?
Pretty good actually. I was teaching a class, and one of my students, she's doing a class on, I think I never heard of it until she mentioned it. She calls it data healing. And so I said, that sounds a lot like remote viewing. So I said, I want you to remote view something at my house. And she came like pretty close to it. So I was impressed, but she didn't really take it seriously. And I was like, oh, if she only took it seriously, she definitely would have got it. So she was like, oh, okay, this is only fun. And I was like, you don't realize. So, but anyway, that was pretty impressive.
So theta healing sounds like something that's done in meditation, or
Um,
is
no, it's a lot like actually it pretty much is remote viewing and remote influencing, pretty much. It's what
oh,
it
so
is.
so she's like using those senses to pinpoint the physical ailment or the spot in the body that needs the attention,
Yeah,
and
and then
then using
influence.
the remote influencing aspect of that.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's
but so it's pretty impressive. So I'm finding more and more people like getting into different things. Like yesterday, I was talking to this American guy, and he was talking about how his friend is really, how he finds more and more people getting into the whole new world order kind of thing and stuff like that. So it's nice to hear that people are kind of like open just to look into something, and not like before where they, you start talking about something and the eyes would glaze over. But
right, right, right. I mean, more and more of these things are being validated too by science, and I mean, it's just and there's so much evidence coming out. So many people are now stepping up to the plate and going, okay, I know how to do this stuff. I've been doing this stuff all my life, and now the society is receptive. They're ready to hear it. They're ready to put down that shroud of disbelief. At least set it aside a little bit, and they can hear me now. And that's one really encouraging aspect of where we are right now in our society. And
yeah,
and along those lines, I think our guest tonight he's actually being heard more and more now than I think probably than he's ever been heard by the masses. Just because we are ready to hear the truth, we're ready to know the truth.
well, I have to say one thing about our guest coming up, and you introduced me in a minute, which is, I've met many journalists, but there's very few journalists that I've met that have the excuse the word, the cojones to actually, do real journalism. Because I met one journalism in New York. I'll tell the story real quick. And he talks about how he's seen UFO and he's had experience. And I said, don't you want to like find out more as a journalist, because this is, your passion? He says, I like my career. pretty much that was his answer. And I was like, oh, I was so disappointed. So I have to give great thanks to people, like our guest coming up that really doesn't care what anybody else says and really goes to the throat of things,
Right.
because very few journalists are left. It's really a dying breed.
Right. Right.
So
Well, true journalists. Yeah, there's a lot.
true journalism, yeah.
There's a lot out there that call themselves journalists,
Well,
but
I don't
they
call that
they
journalism.
tote the company line.
Well, more like the journalist who's like, they see something terrible happen. It's like, well, how does that make you feel? It's like, that's not journalism.
Right.
That's just being a douche.
I could do that.
Anyway, I think you should introduce our guest.
So you can find us on Facebook,
Oh, yeah.
Twitter, YouTube, www.thehundredthmonkeyradio.com, and all those places, Vimeo, et cetera, et cetera. Also, urge you guys to check out our Saturday night live show on the Truth Frequency Radio Network at 7 p.m. Pacific from 7 to 9. So shall we get into it, Ramon?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, our guest really doesn't need a much of a bio for you guys. I'm sure a majority of you listening know who Mr. Jim Mars is. He's a Texan through and through. I'll tell you what, you listen to this guy, and he has got the stars and stripes and the country at heart, and he is all about truth. Mr. Jim Mars, welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio.
It's really great to be with you guys. Can I be the monkey number 101?
You know how many of those are out there right now?
Oh, you've already got 101. How about if I'm number 111?
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Actually, Jim, I think you might be like monkey number 50 something. You might have started the movement.
Yeah, I think you were counted way before we hit that.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, yeah. You just remember, you heard it here first. I've been trying to tell people this stuff for 30, 40 years, and I think you're right. I think you're onto something. I think people are, I'm not sure if they're wising up or if they're just paying closer attention, or maybe the consciousness is being raised. I don't know what's going on, but
I think it's all of the above, Jim. I think society at large is sick and tired of the obvious, blatant bullshit.
Bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I tell you, I see hopeful things all the time. The most hopeful thing I see going right now is I think this Boston Marathon bombing was a false flag in some way, and I think they had a scenario all set up, and they were getting ready to announce that they had a suspect, and probably track back to the Tea Party or the Patriots, or if nothing else, at least something hooked to an Al Qaeda cell. And they had already announced on the networks that they had a suspect in custody, and then all of a sudden they had to backtrack and go, oh no, never mind, no, we don't have anybody, and we don't have any clues, we don't know what's going on. And that's because a lot of the alternative media, particularly my friend Alex Jones, is pointing out that there's these craft private mercenary types, Blackwater wannabes, who are photographed right there at the bomb scene with their little uniforms on and their backpacks. And I think it broke up their little false flag operation. Now I think they're in disarray, and they're not sure what kind of scenario to come back to us with.
Yeah, we got all sorts of watchdogs out now, and
people are paying more attention. They're not just accepting the party line.
Exactly. Well, look at, I know, everything in my whole being told me that they were going to try something at the 2012 Olympics. I mean, everything was set up. The symbology was all there. I mean, everything was pointing towards they were going to try to have some big event there. But there were so many people that were pointing out all the signs and saying, oh, hey, look, and I think they saw all this out in the alternative media, and they said, they're on to us, guys. We better back off.
Yeah, we better come up with another scenario. Yeah, and I'll give you another example. I think it's fairly clear that Osama bin Laden probably died in late 2001. The only true controversy seems to be whether he was killed at Tora Bora or whether he just died of natural causes due to his kidney problems.
I saw him here in a sushi shop, so.
That can't be him because I saw him driving a taxi cab. But even Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State, said that publicly. That, and you may recall that Bhutto over in Pakistan, right before she was assassinated, said, "Oh yeah, well Osama bin Laden, he's already dead." So, and Madeleine Albright said, and others, including some CIA whistleblowers, said that the Bush administration had him literally on ice, and that they were going to wait for the opportune moment, probably when Bush's ratings were in the toilet, to bring him out and then say they got him and get a big boost to the ratings there. But because Madeleine Albright and others were saying that, well, then they couldn't very well do it, because if they'd come out and said, "Oh, we caught Osama bin Laden, praise be to the chief, George W. Bush," then there were too many people who were going, "But wait a minute, they said this is exactly what you're going to do." So they had to wait. And so then Obama gets in office, and they figure, well, Obama's a Democrat, and he's the exact opposite. Everybody thinks he's the exact opposite of George W. Bush. So all of a sudden, when his ratings started plummeting because that phony baloney birth certificate came out and was quickly shown to be fraudulent, and all kinds of things going on, I think they figured, okay, well, we'll just pull that now. And so it's all of a sudden, oh, we found Osama bin Laden and we killed him, shot him in the head. And of course, we all know the confusion that went over all that whole thing.
Right.
And then, oh well, we wanted to be true to Muslim tradition, so we gave him burial at sea, dumped his body in the ocean so nobody could see it, And then most of the guys involved in that SEAL team got, oh geez, terrible tragedy. They got killed in a helicopter crash over in Afghanistan. Nobody left to tell the tale. I mean, oh man, it's getting pretty transparent.
Yep. I had guys at work that are party guys. They're staunch Democrats. That were going, oh, something's fishy with this stuff.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's just so obvious now. It's just
the thing is, it's like they almost don't care anymore. It's just like if I was going to rig up something there at the Boston Marathon, I had little operatives there trying to set that whole thing up. Why would you have them essentially in uniform? They're all wearing the same little black T-shirts and the black jackets and the tan pants and the tan combat boots, and even have the little death head logo from the Punisher on their hats and on their jackets, and had radios in their ears and stuff. It's like, wait a minute, do they really think we're that stupid? And apparently so.
Well,
now, if somebody comes forward and says, okay, we hired those people as security, and they had no idea what was going to happen, I'll listen to that. Okay, but so far, nobody like that was supposed to be there.
Well, they say that if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes a truth.
That's right. More. That's you know who said that, don't you?
Was it Hitler or?
Yeah, it was Hitler. He said people will be more quick to believe the big lie than the little lie, and I think he's got a point. What he goes on to say, I read the whole little section there in Mein Kampf. He says that. Everybody is accustomed to little lies. We all tell a little lie now and then, sometimes out of the best of intentions. I mean, if your wife comes home and says, "How do you like my new dress?"
Right.
You don't dare say, "It looks like you're in a sack of potatoes." No. You won't get any good supper that night. So you have to say, "Well, that's real interesting," or "That's you," So we all tell little fibs now and then, but most people, the vast majority of people are honest folks, and they just cannot conceive of trying to get by with just an outrageous big lie. So they can't get their head wrapped around it. So if you tell them a big outrageous lie and you just keep hitting them with it, they'll believe that quicker than they will a little lie.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I can actually see the situation where finally somebody steps up to the plate from the organization and tells the truth, and everybody thinks they're full of shit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. I'll tell you what, I said years and years ago that the grassy knoll gunman in the Kennedy assassination could come forward, admit to the crime, have some evidence to support what he's saying, and nobody believe him. And sure enough, we got James File sitting in Joliet prison right now who's confessed to being the grassy knoll gunman, tells a pretty good story, and there's some evidence linking him to the crime. And he was connected to the Chicago mob, and he was connected to special ops in the military and the CIA, and nobody believes him. And
right.
They just said, FBI said, oh, there's nothing to that. So everybody just went, oh, well, never mind about him.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. So, how's that new book doing, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy?
Well, it's doing just fine, rocking right along, but there's an even newer one. That's why I'm glad we got this chance to talk, because I wanted to tell you about my latest book, which has only been out about a month now, and it's called Our Occulted History. And let me quickly point out that when I use the term occulted, you're not going to read about vampires or zombies or devil worship. I use the term occulted in the astronomical sense. When the moon eclipses the sun, that's called an occultation. It occults the sun, which means it simply means it hides or masks the sun. So basically what I'm saying there is our hidden history,
right.
Although there is an unearthly aspect to it, because as the subtitle says, does the global elite conceal ancient aliens? Whoa, how's that? I combined two popular themes, but they are generally not thought to have any connection. And that is one being something that you guys, I'm sure, talk about a lot, the New World Order, the fact that there's a small handful of individuals, super wealthy, who are trying to control the world. And then a increasingly popular theme, pushed along probably by that TV series called Ancient Aliens, or Ancient Astronauts, about the idea that the Earth was visited millennia ago by extraterrestrials. And my working hypothesis was the question, do the two connect? And the answer is yes, they do.
Yeah, Jim, I think we probably talk more about the consciousness and UFO end of things versus the conspiracy end of things. We've kind of tried to stay away from that topic mainly on this show. I mean, it works into it because it's all tied together.
Exactly, it's all the same ball of wax. But
the main focus of the 100th Monkey Radio is raising the consciousness of the planet. I mean, we want people to wake up. We want to watch people, get off their ass and pull their heads out and, see what's really going on here, and, understand that it takes one to change the world, and
exactly.
That one is you, and you, and you, and you, and you.
Yeah.
So.
Let me point out, which is something that I know you know, but I don't know if your listeners have ever really thought about this, but there has actually never in the history of the world has anything positive been accomplished by committee or a group. Okay, everything you can think of, from the building of empires to the invention of penicillin and the microscope and the telescope and the telephone, and it's all done by individuals. So don't tell me that I hear this all the time. Well, I'm just one person. What can I do about it? Well, you can do everything about it if you just apply yourself and do whatever it is you do best.
Exactly.
I mean, like one of my heroes, which is Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, yes. He really proved the power of one. I mean, we're talking about a guy, and I say this all the time. It's like broken glasses, a sheet around his waist, and sandals.
Right. And by the way, he is generally regarded as an icon for nonviolence, which he was. But he's also on the record as saying that when you're attacked and you have to defend yourself, get a weapon. So he certainly was not for gun control.
Right, right.
And Jesus, the Prince of Peace, the same deal. He told his disciples, he said, go get a sword. If you ain't got a sword, go get a sword, and wield it righteously. There is no prohibition against defending yourself or your family.
Yeah, but then I think organized religion jumped in and grabbed his testimony and decided to push that turn the other cheek thing.
Yeah. That's true too. But then now you start getting into the interpretations and misinterpretations
exactly
of the whole thing, and you just get in a whole tangle there. For example, they'll cite the verse saying, "Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar," which they use to argue that you're supposed to pay your taxes and be a good citizen, obey the laws. Okay, and yet if you read further, you'll find that at one point his disciples asked Jesus, should we pay taxes? And Jesus' response, at least what's come down to us, it was probably stronger than this. I think they probably softened it, but certainly for King James. But basically he said, well, go down the river and catch a fish, and if you find a coin in the fish's mouth, then give that as a tax. Well, what are the odds you're going to find a coin in a fish's mouth? You're not. So basically, he was saying, don't pay any taxes. Okay, right. But of course, they don't want to talk about that.
So, tell us about the occulted history. I know, Ramon and I both, and most of our audience is pretty understanding in the fact that there is let's say non-locals that have had a lot of influence on this planet throughout our history. One thing I'm curious of, did you go into the whole Eisenhower thing?
Are you talking about the reported meeting between Eisenhower and aliens?
Right.
I covered that in my book, Alien Agenda. That was back in the 90s. This one is mostly about how our solar system came into being and how that there is evidence on Mars, the moon, some of the moons in the solar system, moons of Jupiter, that indicates that there has been an ET presence there way back. So it's not just the Earth. And of course, then the stories, one of the most common themes among all the cultures of the world are the sky gods who came from the sky and taught them things. And what I'm beginning to see through my research here is that when you talk about the mythology, the Enki and Enlil of the Sumerians, and Ra and Osiris of the Egyptians, and Zeus and of the Greeks, and Jupiter of the Romans, I think they're talking about the same individual,
right?
Because the characteristics are all the same. And to point out the similarities there, we all know about the Greek Titans, especially if you've seen those movies, the Wrath of the Titans and Clash of the Titans. And the Titans, of course, were the original pantheon of the Greek gods, and they were called the Titans. Well, that's simply a hand-me-down and a garbled version of the Sumerian tablets, which predate the Bible by thousands of years. And in there we find that the Sumerian word for those who came from the skies is Titan. Huh. So we see that I think they're all talking about the same thing. And I think that they came here in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. They refer to them as the Anunnaki, which translates as those who came down from the heavens, landed on the earth. And they taught them mathematics and law and farming and communication, all kinds of things. In fact, they say that it was the ancient Anunnaki who, in an effort to create a worker race, altered the DNA of Earth primitives and created modern man that could do work for them. And this may be the answer to the old ages-long question of where's the missing link. And the answer is it's still missing because there is no link. They even go into great detail in these tablets about how that these Anunnaki took the sperm of an Anunnaki male and fertilized the egg of a Earth primitive female who came from Africa, by the way. Shall we call her Lucy?
Right.
Since they have been able to track human evolution back to one female in Africa. That's the scientists. And then they took the fertilized egg and put it in the womb of a Anunnaki female who carried it to term, and then through cesarean section gave birth to the hybrid that they call the Adama, or the Adam. Hello. And I think we're seeing garbled, misunderstood versions of that whole story coming down through the Bible. For example, in the Sumerian tablets, they have a very full account of the Great Flood. And it's the same account we get in the Old Testament. The fellow gets word from his God that there's going to be a big flood, and he's told to get bitumen and pitch and all kinds of stuff and seal this big ark and go off. And the rains came 40 days, 40 nights, and he ends up on Mount Ararat, the same mountain mentioned in both stories. In fact, the stories are identical, although thousands of years apart. There are only two differences. One is simply the name. In the Old Testament, the fellow's name is Noah. In the ancient Sumerian tablets, it's Upnapishkin, and perhaps even another name at some point is used. And the other difference to me is quite significant because having talked about creating this hybrid through gene splicing and genetic manipulation, so obviously they had the knowledge of cloning and of gene splicing. It states, instead of saying he was ordered to take 2 of every living thing, it says he was told to take the seed of every living thing. Well, now, instead of a boatload of animals, you've got a closet with all these vials of tissue, DNA samples, that they could use to restore the life on a flooded and wrecked Earth, which makes a whole lot more sense.
That big seed vault, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like we're doing with the seed vault.
Now, Jim, recently I had heard, I'm trying to remember the name of the story, but over in, actually right by where Tom is, in the Northwest, where there was, who was it? I can't remember the guy from the Webbots.
Cliff High.
Cliff High was telling a story about Native American legend where they were, these sky people had come down and they were basically at war with these sky people. And the way the description that they gave was, sounded a lot like the Anunnaki, and how the Anunnaki kept claiming to them that they were their gods. And it was like, actually, no, you're not. It was these guys who are more amphibian type, which also reminds me of Babylon and Sumeria, the god from the sea. Mm-hmm. Which also reminds me of the Dogon from East Africa.
Right.
In the description. So I kind of feel, I'm starting to feel that the Anunnaki, they went to different parts of the world and they fed this, for lack of a better word, bullshit to a lot of humans. And some humans knew, like in the Native Americans in the Northwest, but maybe the Sumerians had no idea, so they just brought the bullshit.
Right. Or how about this? What if the Anunnaki was but one set of ETs, and that there were other groups coming here too? And they may have, it would be like the Spanish and the French and the English all trying to settle North America, right? And so they might have clashed with each other.
Yeah.
And this may explain why that in every territory, and particularly, for example, in China. China has stories of these ancient gods that came from the sky and their flying chariots, and et cetera, et cetera. But the Chinese are a different race from the Caucasians, and so maybe they evolved under a different set of ETs. And they believe that they're, and that's why the ETs would say, well, we're your God, worship no other gods, okay?
Right.
Yeah, that one I always, I questioned that in Catholic school, and by the way, never do that.
Got your hand slapped, didn't you?
Oh man. But I never understood that, because if there's only one God, as it's taught, then who do you have to worry about?
Exactly. That's like in the Old Testament, they tell the story of the Tower of Babel, and it quotes the singular monotheistic God as saying, let us go down and let us try to stop all this, or these humans are going to become like us. Wait a minute. Is this the royal we, like the Queen of England says? Or are they talking about more than one?
Yeah. What did you find with the whole bloodline? Because I remember actually a documentary I saw you in, I think it was on the History Channel or Discovery Channel, and it was years ago before I even thought of having a radio show. And I remember you saying how, you're following these bloodlines, but you can't just go out and say, okay, you guys are reptilians. I know I'm not paraphrasing exactly what you say, but what do you feel about the whole bloodline? Because some people say how certain types, there's a pure bloodline, and when you mix that bloodline with, like, for example, ours, you get people who are hemophiliacs.
Uh-huh. And there's a whole thing about negative Rh blood that's found in just certain types. That's a huge part of it, because you go to let's go back to 2000 and the great selection there. I was already aware, because there was a press release from Burke's Peerage, a very prestigious genealogical publication in England, and they were predicting that George W. Bush would get to be president over Al Gore, because they said while both Bush and Gore were related and were both of royal blood related to the Windsors, the ruling family in England, Bush family had closer bloodline ties, and so he would become president. And of course, what we now know is that Gore won the election, but they stopped the recount in Florida, and the Supreme Court awarded the presidency to George W. Bush. So it turns out they were exactly right, and that he got the nod. Now, when Barack Hussein Obama was elected, I thought, well, at least we didn't get one of those same Windsor-connected bloodlines, but oops, wait a minute. According to Lynn Cheney, the wife of Dick Cheney, Obama is the 8th cousin to Dick Cheney. He's a descendant of Maureen Duval, a French Huguenot whose son married the granddaughter of Richard Cheney, who arrived in Maryland in the late 1650s. So I was going, oh, now, wait a minute. And then I read in the Chicago Sun-Times that both Obama and Cheney are blood relations to the Bush family. They are 10th cousins once removed, and they're linked through a 17th century Massachusetts couple, Sarah and Samuel Hinckley. And this Hinckley is a distant relative of John Warnock Hinckley, a good friend of George Herbert Walker Bush's and a fellow oil man, and it was Hinckley's son, John Warnock Hinckley Jr., who was the man who shot Ronald Reagan in 1981 and put Bush into the leadership position while Reagan was recovering from his wound. Now, what do you think the odds of all that are? And they're all interrelated.
That's
and they're
like
all of the bloodline.
That's like a consistent royal flush, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
So to speak.
Yeah.
But
so the guy, so,
you know, you never hear of Joe Blow, you know, the son of an itinerant Italian baker who has no connection to anybody. You don't see them getting to be president of the United States.
Right. Right. Yeah. Here we thought we came over here and set this country up under a democracy where we actually had that freedom.
Nah.
Yeah.
It's all a delusion.
Yeah, I can't remember where I heard it. I don't know if it was you or I heard somebody else talking about how every single president has been related to the royal family, and actually how all the royals in Europe. Trying to remember the name of the book that I read over 10 years ago, where he was tying in how everybody in Europe was related.
Right. Well, I think what you're thinking of is that out of the president up through Bill Clinton, well, actually, since after Clinton, of course, we got George Herbert Walker Bush, and then George W. Bush, and then and now Obama, who, as we just said, they're related. So I guess all of the presidents, 33 of them have been related to either Alfred the Great, King of England, or Charlemagne, the King of France. So, now I totally understand the argument that if you go far enough back, we're all related. I guess I could say Ramon and Tom, we're all related. If you go all the way back to Adam or somewhere like that, so I understand that argument. But as we just saw, we're only talking about in 100 years, a couple of 100 years, and yet they're all related to the same European royalty. And the European royalty, they claim relationships because they have the blue blood. They are of the royal line. Now, what's the thing with the bloodline? It's those who have the closest bloodlines to the ancient gods. And as I previously pointed out, the ancient gods of the Romans were simply a name change from the same gods of the Greeks, which is nothing but a name change from the gods of the Egyptians, which was no more than another name change from the gods of Sumer. And they all came from the Anunnaki, who came from space. Hello.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious. So, Jim, I used to live in New York, and now I live in Japan, and I was on the train, and I saw this guy reading one of your books, and I was just amazed, and I was like, oh, you like Jim Morris? He's like, well, I just started reading this, and someone gave it to me, and I was like, oh man, I was just like, he's great. You gotta read his other stuff. And I was telling him about what was Rise of the Fourth Reich.
Uh-huh.
How far along do you see that, or is it in place already?
Oh, you mean the book?
No.
Oh, you mean the Fourth Reich?
Yes.
Yeah, we are in the Fourth Reich right now. See, what a lot of people don't understand is they don't understand. Well, what they understand is what they've been taught and what they've learned through the corporate control media, which is that the communism, which is an extreme form of socialism, was the big deadly enemies of the Nazis. Okay, and that World War II was largely fought on the Eastern Front, and all that's true. But what they don't understand is that communism was nothing more than a extreme form of socialism, and that the Nazis, the very name Nazi stands for National Socialist. They were both socialist. It's kind of like the Republicans and the Democrats. They act like they fight with each other all the time, but basically they all want the same thing. They want to be in control. That's what they're fighting over. Now, I'm not talking about the rank and file. I know lots of Democrats, and they're good folks. They're well-intentioned. They have the best intentions in the world. but they're not very realistic, but they're there. And the Republicans, most of the rank and file, they're honest, honorable people who are very well intentioned too. But I'm talking about the top leadership. They don't want what's best for the country. They want what's best for their party. And what's best for their party is not to correct the ills of this country or the problems, but to simply get into power so that they have the power. And it's the same thing with the socialist in Russia and the socialist in Germany. They wanted the power. They wanted the central authority. And so today we have national socialism is what we have working and operative in the United States. It just doesn't appear that way because everybody's told about the bad, greedy old corporations, which is true. And yet the word fascism itself is coined by Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy during World War II, based on his black-shirted fascistas. And their symbol was an axe wrapped in a bundle of sticks, and that is symbolic of central authority, okay? The axe is the central authority holding the sticks together through sheer power and might. And even Mussolini himself said that fascism is really not the correct term. The correct term, he said, should be corporatism, ruled by the corporate elite. And that's what we have today, but they are practicing this through socialism. The difference is that the money does not flow to the people, it flows to the corporations. It's corporate socialism. And or corporatism, which, in the words of Mussolini, actually is what we call fascism, and that's what we have today. It's just like Obama, who, the left wing and the liberals are all praising him, saying he's going to be the environmental president, and yet look who's pushing for this horrendous pipeline, another pipeline. And by the way, I guess you know about the pipeline break in Arkansas, still spewing oil all over the place. But no, we don't hear much about that.
Yeah, and did you hear about that fertilizer plant explosion too?
Oh yeah, down here in West Texas. That's just terrible. But I'll tell you this, guys, I've looked into that pretty closely. And at this point, I'm going to say that was just an industrial accident, as terrible as it was. I don't see any reason to think that was any sort of act of terrorism or planned or anything.
Well, here's something I found pretty fascinating. The day before that happened, there's one of these websites that sends out daily videos. And the day before that happened, they sent out a video, the documentary on the Oklahoma City bombing.
Mm-hmm.
I found it, okay, well, that was fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, the fertilizer plant blows up.
Yeah. Well, now that you bring that up, let me point something out here. Supposedly, Timothy McVeigh, a lone nut assassin in the league of Lee Harvey Oswald, used 3,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate to blow down the facade of this steel-reinforced concrete federal building there in Oklahoma City, which is an impossibility. Now, the explosion, if you saw the home video the guy took from his cell phone camera of that explosion at the West fertilizer plant, now that was an explosion. That was huge. That probably could have brought down the front of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, but that, according to the news reports, was 54,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate.
Yeah.
So the idea that 3,000 pounds is going to cause that kind of devastation just doesn't wash.
Now that you mention that reminds me of where was it? Was it Chechnya? The building, yes, in Chechnya, that burned for 3 days. A 40-story building burned for 3 days, and yet it's still
It didn't fall down.
It didn't fall down.
No. There's never been a steel-reinforced building in the history of the world to collapse due to fire, except the World Trade Center buildings.
Right.
And that
Which-
includes Building 7. It wasn't even hit by an airplane.
Which only burned for what, an hour?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But see, wait a minute. Now you guys are using your common sense. You know you're not supposed to be doing that.
Oh, sorry.
You're supposed to just accept those government pronouncements at face value and don't
We'll
question.
edit that part out.
Well, you know, Jim, playing the devil's advocate here. Sam, just a common Joe out there on the street, going to work, doing my job, making my money, bought a house, making my
trying
payments,
to take care of your family,
raising a family, all this stuff. What's going on in our world is so, it's so horrendous. And it's so, it totally destroys your person's vision of their future, of the happy family and raising a happy family and retiring. And if you look at this stuff and you see it changes your life. And I personally think it changes it for the better, because I would much rather be have my eyes open and be able to see the danger coming than to be standing with my eyes closed and get smacked in the back of the head. But
exactly. And you know what? Actually, that's a theme of my new book, Our Occulted History, which is when you look at this ruling elite, this handful of individuals who are trying to run the world, their track record's not very good. Just over the past 100 years, we've had 2 world wars, we've had a Great Depression, we've had, economic ups and downs, we've had Holocaust, we've had all genocide, ethnic cleansing, and look at what they've been doing here locally with spraying us with chemtrails, giving us bad vaccines full of all kinds of things like squalene and on like that, bad food and water. We're the most obese and unhealthy nation in the world. Our infant mortality rate is something like 47 or 50th in the world. It just goes on and on. So wait a minute, are they just greedy capitalists, or are they even us? Because you would think, even the old robber barons knew that what the old farmers knew, which is you have to put a little something back. You have to let the field lie fallow one season so you get a bumper crop the next.
Right.
And you have to put a little something back in to get something out. But these folks seem intent on killing the golden goose. The goose that's laying the golden eggs. They want to take it all down, and it's all take, and there's no give anymore. And it's almost like they know that something's fixing to happen, and they're trying to soak every dime out of the world economy before whatever it is going to happen. And that's kind of scary, actually.
The big question is, are they trying to soak it out of there and leave, or are they just trying to soak it out of there and go out
just for the power? Yeah. I tell you, I think if you follow their methodology, they always play both ends against the middle. That's why they support the Democrats and also support the Republicans. That way, no matter who gets in, they're still beholden to them and will follow their instructions. So if following that methodology, I think what we see is that on the one hand, they are trying to gain control over society so that no matter what happens, they will maintain their tight control over society. But then if that doesn't work and things get bad enough, I think they are preparing to leave the planet.
Yeah. Well, I can't.
But I don't think they know for certain what exactly is going to happen, when exactly, and how bad it's going to be. So therefore, they're just playing both ends. If it turns out, like say, the 10th planet comes through, there's some earthquakes, some volcanoes, there's some cataclysmic stuff that happens on the world, but it's not world destroying. Most people still left, and we can pick up the pieces and go on. Well, then they're in control. Okay, if it gets so bad, then they can leave.
Yeah. I definitely see how they could be setting themselves up for both ends there. But it just baffles me, and I guess this comes from being a caring human, that that they're poisoning the planet that they live on,
Exactly.
the same planet that they live on. It just doesn't. That does not compute.
Unless they have the antidotes. And maybe this is how they're able to gain the allegiance of people who otherwise that wouldn't pay them any attention. And I'm thinking, for example, of Bill Gates, who apparently, from all I know, is just a computer nerd who happened to hit on a good operating system, and there's even those that would argue that, but made a $1 kajillion, ended up being one of the richest guys in the whole world. Well, how do you get him on your side? You can't buy him. He's got all the money he needs. But what if you go to him and say, hey, we have advanced technology, and if you'll play ball with us and help push our agenda of vaccines and depopulation, we will see to it that you and your family no longer have to suffer any illnesses, and plus we can see to it that you can probably live up to a couple of 100 years. That might make you sit up and take notice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
I agree with that. Yeah, you start to wonder, because we're over here scrambling, trying to figure things out, like what's happening and putting the puzzles together, and every so often you get a piece that it looks like it fits, but it's
doesn't fit.
Yeah, but it doesn't fit. So,
right.
Like they throw the puzzles, like, oh, here's a piece of the puzzle. It's like, wait, that puzzle is not right. That's not even part of the same board.
Right. Well, that again, I would lay back on the corporate control media. There are 5 multinational corporations with interlocking ownerships and directorships. So, in other words, a handful of people control these 5 corporations that control everything we see and hear. And I'm not just talking news, I'm talking about movies, TV, satellite, cable, billboards, magazines, book clubs, publishing, you name it. Everything we see and hear is controlled by a handful of people who own these 5 multinational corporations. Now, that is extremely concentrated power. And what they do is they weave an electromagnetic matrix around us, and we think that we see the world and it's like this, and this is here and that's there, and this is the way it operates, when that's not the way it operates at all. And that's why it's such a false picture of the world that occasionally we stumble across some information and some facts that, as you say, just don't seem to fit. But actually they do if you had a truthful view of the world.
Jim, at the same time, I've noticed these little seeds, these little golden seeds getting through in the major media. For example, you have a TV show, Touch, where they talk about these corporations that control everything, and they're trying to get these genius kids to do the work for them. And then at the same time, you have a TV show like Grimm, where it's you have this powerful family that's trying to take over the world.
Right.
So, I'm finding certain themes that are playing, especially in the sci-fi world, that come in and they give you little hints, like, So I at the same time, there's this major control, but little things get leaked out in science fiction.
Ramon, this is a battlefield.
Yeah.
Pure and simple, it's a battlefield. We got guys working on both sides.
Yeah.
We've got entities or beings, whatever you want to call them, working on both sides and seeding this information in both directions. Now,
right.
You're going to see that majority of the stuff that we do get that is, that has that resonant frequency of truth, it's coming to us in metaphor. It's coming to us in ways that you have to really have your eyes open, or be paying attention to even get any kind of a glimpse of.
Well, and that goes all the way back. I know that in the New Testament, the disciples asking Jesus, why do you just always talk in these parables, which are just little stories? And he says, well, I talk in parables because that's about all that the general public can understand. He said, but you're my disciples. Said, for you, I'll explain everything. Okay, great, except you read the New Testament, and what do we get? We get the parables, right?
Right.
So I wish somebody had bothered to write down what he really told them. But, yes, you're right. And I'll further say this. I don't even go so far as to think that this is all some kind of conscious plot to leak out good information. I think what's happening here is that they are so busy controlling the nonfiction news that things tend to slip out in the entertainment world. And they don't worry about it because most people, even if they get an interesting concept through a TV show, they go, oh, well, that was just a TV show, it's not real, and they go back to sleep. And yet the people who write those things, if you've gotten to the point to where you're writing for major motion pictures or you're writing for a major TV series or whatever, those are not stupid people. Those are very smart, educated people making big bucks, and yet they have a knowledge and a social conscience. And I think that when they write those scripts, they slip in, as you say, these allegories and these metaphors for what's really going on. And so it's unfortunate, but you're getting more truth off of dramatized TV shows and movies than you are off the news.
Right. until they go too far and it becomes apparent, like shows like The Event.
Well, then they don't last long.
Yeah, and then they cut you out after a season, and
yeah. And what kills me is that their argument usually is, well, no, nobody's watching that. Well, if you take it off the air, certainly nobody's going to be watching that.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you, you talk about entertainment that foresees real events. Are you all aware of the Chris Carter spinoff series, The Lone Gunman? Let me tell you this one real quick. This aired in March the 3rd, 2001, 6 months before 9/11.
Oh, right.
And that's when it aired, which means they were shooting this. It was in production probably in the fall of 2000. If you'll recall, Chris Carter's the guy that wrote the X-Files.
Right.
And if you'll recall the X-Files, which was extremely popular, they had some really amazing episodes in there. And but Fox Mulder and Scully, the FBI agents, they never did learn this stuff on their own. They were simply tipped off to the conspiracies by these three computer nerds that went collectively by the name of the Lone Gunman. One of them was tall, had long, stringy blonde hair, another little short guy. You probably remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Okay, so he decided he was going to have a spin-off series excuse me, about the Lone Gunman. So on March 3rd, 2001, they aired the premiere pilot episode, and grab this. The story was that one of the Lone Gunman's father, they thought got killed in a car crash, but it turns out it was a hitman who'd been sent to kill him, and he luckily got the drop on the hitman, killed him, and then faked this car crash to make it seem like he's dead. And the son asked him, well, why'd you do that? He said, so they wouldn't come after me again. He said, well, who's after you? And he said, the government. He said, well, why would the government be after you? You work for the government. He said, because of what I know. He said, well, what do you know? And the whole show then unravels, and as it goes along, we find out that there's a plot within the U.S. government by one section of operatives to use Global Hawk airplane computer capture technology to seize control over a commercial airliner and fly it into the World Trade Center, all under the cover of a war game exercise, and then blame it on Middle Eastern terrorists so they can get their budget increased.
Hmm.
Now, how amazing is that? Because in a very
That's
basic sense, that's just about what really happened on 9/11.
Yeah. So what really blows me away is you know, the guy that wrote this thing, was he picking this up intuitively, or was there some inside information?
Exactly. That's what I'd like to know.
I tend to think that the majority of this stuff is picked up intuitively. I mean, you know, look at the whole remote viewing stuff. I mean,
yeah. Well, let me tell you, Tom.
We have those abilities.
Let me tell you, Tom. Basically, I tend to agree with you. There was a story written back in the 30s about a futuristic story where there was an atomic bomb, okay? And in fact, it was so close to describing what a real atomic bomb would be like that the FBI actually descended on this guy and interrogated him mercilessly because they thought he had some kind of information, but he really didn't. And same deal. In the late 1800s, there was a story written about the world's greatest, safest, greatest iron ship called the Titan or something like that, and it hit an iceberg and it sank. You know, this was years before the Titanic, and it was the same deal. And in those instances, I really do believe that that was a case where somebody was just very sensitive and intuitive and was picking up off the universal grid the foreshadowing of these events. But now, number one, Chris Carter had a track record of presenting all kinds of wild stuff in the X-Files series that later turned out to be based on real things that were happening within the secretive government, UFO, military complex. And also, it was well known, admitted that he had some very, very tight and inside sources. And if it had simply been a case of him saying, we're going to fly a plane into the World Trade Center, that wouldn't have been such a big deal, because it had already been bombed once in 1993, and it wouldn't have been too hard to figure out that it would have been a big target for terrorists. And of course, Middle East, we were already dealing with Osama bin Laden, and we already knew there was the potential for attacks from Middle Eastern terrorists. So I could go with you there, but when it gets to under the cover of war game exercises, it was 2 years after 9/11 before they finally admitted that there were war game exercises going on. And the fact that they used Global Hawk technology, which was a technology where they can capture the onboard computer of a wide-body jet and take over the computer and then fly it regardless of what the crew or even the hijackers wanted. That was technology that was not really known to the public. And yet, to me, this is obviously used on 9/11 because, think about it, as a former award-winning aviation writer, you got 4 separate sets of hijackers hijacking 4 separate airliners, leaving 4 separate airports at 4 separate times, and yet their transponders all go off at the same time. How is that possible? And the answer is, it's not, unless you capture them all at the same time electronically. And they certainly had the technology because, as I document in my 9/11 book, The Terror Conspiracy Revisited, in the summer of 2001, just a month or two before 9/11, there was a Boeing 737 that flew out of Vandenberg Air Force Base and flew all the way to Australia, flew 12 successful missions, and then flew all the way back and landed safely at Vandenberg. And all this time, there was no one on board. It was all done by Global Hawk remote control technology. So they had it.
Yep.
But we didn't know that. And when you use technology that the public is largely unaware of, then you can put out any cover story you want to, and no one can, really credibly argue against you.
Yeah, I've suspected that that's what is flying all these chemtrail planes around, is they're all computer guided. And that's why we don't have those people standing up saying, I was on this crew.
That's right.
I'm really not happy with what they're doing.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
You have nobody there. There's nobody to talk.
That's right. As they say, 2 people can keep a secret if one of them's dead.
Exactly.
So I want to go a little further back and talk to you about guys like Walter Cronkite and some stories around him. Like one story I heard where he was at one of the nuclear testings. I forgot which one was it, and there was this UFO had come over and he had seen it, and he kind of wanted to talk about it, but he was told not to, of course. Have you heard anything like that?
Yes, I've heard that same story, but of course Walter's not with us anymore, so there's no real way of telling. But let me say this about Walter Cronkite and others, Walter Winchell and I don't know, McNeil and Lehrer on PBS and some of those guys. Now, these were real old-time journalists, not like the fancy talking heads anchors of today. I mean, they'd been trained in journalism, dedicated to journalism, and basically they were good journalists. But they were of the World War II Cold War generation that thought that it was their patriotic duty to support the government, and if the government said, well, this could damage national security, then they were loath to say anything out of the best of motives, thinking they were being very patriotic. So I wouldn't blame them. Who I would blame are these jerks in politics and in top government positions who want to keep secrets, not for any genuine national security purpose, but just so they can have the power, because knowledge is power. And they can keep the power by keeping these secrets to themselves. And so they have so overused this rubric of national defense that it's gotten to be almost meaningless. What's in your trash can? Oh, I can't tell you. It's national defense, national security. Yeah, come on. I was in military intelligence myself in the Army, and so I totally understand the need for some secrecy. I mean, you don't want to telegraph where all your units are and how strong they are and give away vital military information and defense information that could indeed harm your national security. But there's limits, okay? Today, the government lies to us when they don't even have to lie to us.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know. It's just gotten nuts, and it's not going to get better until we demand more transparency in government. And of course, Obama gets elected under the promise that he's going to have more transparency in government, and yet it turns out that he's squelched more whistleblowers, issued more executive secret orders, done more to close up the government than even Bush did.
Right.
Yeah, that's so true.
So on the other side of the coin here, Jim, what are you seeing out there that is giving you encouragement?
Well, I see all kinds of things. It's just like we started off without getting all into it again, the fact that I think they had a whole scenario set up for this Boston Marathon thing, and it was going to lead to something else, which was going to help cover up for something else, and I think it's falling apart. People aren't going for it like they used to. They're questioning the government rather than just going with their story. I see that as very encouraging. We're getting the same old rhetoric on this West Texas fire thing, but let me tell you what I think is a hopeful story, which is about a year ago, maybe it's 2 years now, down in that same area, just east of Austin, Texas, they had some tremendous fires down there. And all the local volunteer fire departments all rushed in, and they brought food, they brought water, they set up triage, they set up, centers for food and water, and people were bringing water, shipping water, donating water, and doing what most Americans do in the event of an emergency. They band together and they take care of business. And after several days, who shows up but FEMA? And they said, okay, we're in charge here now. Said, here, some of you fire departments said, we hadn't got the funds to be paying you, so you need to just leave, and we'll see about bringing the food down here. And all these good folks down in South Texas said, we don't need you. Get out of here. Told them to hit the road. And a day or so later, they come back kind of with hat in hand saying, well, we really would kind of like to help. And here, we brought you some T-shirts, You know, so they said, okay, we'll take your T-shirts now, get on. And so the local folks handled it, told the feds to take a hike. I find that quite encouraging.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, I just I'm looking at Facebook now, and I saw somebody post something, and it pretty much says, while you were distracted by Boston and Texas, Congress passed CISPA, which
Yeah.
I wasn't aware
I saw
of
that today. Yeah, and most people never even heard of it, you know. But what this means is that this is going to require the internet to turn over everything they've got on you to the government. So in other words, now your friendly Google and your friendly Facebook and all the Twitters and Tweakies and all the little stuff that everybody enjoys so much, they're now spy organs for your government.
So it is 1984, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I hope everyone listening is taking note of this, because they need to clearly understand anything you put in your computer is now open to the government and to anybody, a hacker, anybody who can get in and find the proper code. So don't put anything on your computer. Look at the politicians that have been ruined because they were writing dirty notes to their girlfriend, or sometimes not even their girlfriend. And the people have been caught in swindles. People have been caught with child pornography and God knows what all, you know. And it's all because they just put it on their computer. And so many people, they've saved the National Security Agency millions and millions and millions of dollars. But it would have cost for them to try to spy on them and find out their activities. No, people are just putting it up there for anybody who wants to come read about it, you know.
Yep.
And of course, I've heard all the arguments. Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you know, you don't have anything to worry about. Yeah, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, but I think what I do in my private life, that's my private business. It's not anybody's business what I'm doing, whether it's legal or not.
Well, you know, things that should be legal are becoming illegal, like freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Yeah. I am so perturbed at a story down here in Texas. Y'all may not have heard about that. Here's a veteran from Iraq who's back and buys his 15-year-old son an AR-15, which is just a semi-automatic rifle, you know, kind of a copy of the M16, but it's not automatic. It's a single shot, and you have to pull the trigger. And he goes out to working on the kid's Eagle Scout badge, and they take the rifle and they're going to hike out in the country, do some hiking, and then maybe plink at something. And plus, they got something to defend themselves if a rabid skunk comes up or something. And all they're doing is walking down a road, and they're accosted by the Temple, Texas police, who arrest him because he's carrying a gun. He said, "What am I doing wrong? What am I charged with? Am I violating the law?" He's not violating the law. And you know, one of the cops has the audacity to tell him, he said, "You're violating the law." And they said, "We're above the law." And that's what the cops are being taught today. And it is so wrong. You know, we're in big trouble unless we start waking up and demanding that our leaders and our police agencies follow the Constitution. It stood us in good stead for 200 years, and there's no reason to give it up now.
Right. I agree.
By the way, you're asking about what's the good news. Yesterday, all but two of all this bunch of gun control proposals got defeated, which is good. Yay.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't think everybody ought to pack a gun, walk around. If you don't like guns, you don't want a gun, well, don't get one. Nobody says you have to have one. But the thing is, the Second Amendment says the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed, and the Supreme Court has now ruled that means the people. It means people. You can have a gun, okay? Now, if you misuse it, throw the book at you, all right? But the main thing is that we've already got laws in the books against threatening people with a gun, using a gun in commission of a crime, murder, assault. They're all in the books. Okay, why do we need more? It's just political grandstanding, and it's savaging the Constitution. And the main thing is it's opening us up to a real danger, because historically, the first step of any tyrant and despot is to disarm the population. And if they ever disarm the population of the United States, we'll just move right into martial law, and it'll be the Gestapo all over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't think that's not going to happen, because it already is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know that we're coming to a point, I feel, Jim, that they're going to overstep the line, and it's going to happen. We're gonna have that. The people are going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to step over that line that they've been pushing and pushing and pushing, and you know it's not going to be pretty.
But have you ever considered that might be the plan? Because they push until finally the public pushes back. Then they declare a state of civil emergency, police, state martial law, and call in the United Nations troops to restore order. And we're under occupation, and they're running the show under a police state.
Yeah, I've looked at that too, and you know, I don't. Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on how I feel it's going to play out. Yeah, the potential's there. The potential's definitely there for that revolution to start, and for them to come in and you know, put the clamps down.
But they're playing with fire.
But the potential's also there for us to do it in other ways. You know, to do.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I advocate. There's more of us than there are of them. All we got to do is just say no. No,
right.
We're not going to do that, and you're not either. I'm reminded of the story of the Japanese general staff right after Pearl Harbor, and they were going congratulating each other and said, "We've just knocked out the America's Pacific Fleet, and you know, let's just go on and invade California and take over the country." You know, and one of the admirals there said, I wouldn't advise that. Said, I think you'd find that there would be a rifle behind every blade of grass, which is true. That's why the Japanese did not invade the United States after Pearl Harbor.
Now, this may come out of the movies, but out of the movie Midway, but I believe there was a comment made that they just woke a sleeping giant or something like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the admiral's name. He was the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack. Yamamoto.
Yamamoto.
Yeah, Yamamoto. And he also said, "I'm afraid we've just awakened a sleeping giant." And that's what these New World Order people better be very careful about, because they're liable to wake up the sleeping giant.
And you know, with the way we're connected now, Jim, with the internet and all these fancy phones and all this stuff, you know, the way the world is so connected, I don't think if it blows up here, it's not going to be just here.
No.
It's going to be the planet.
Yeah. You're talking about kind of like the Arab Spring kind of thing?
Yeah. But isn't that kind of ironic and kind of funny that when Egypt's youth rebels, and then it's Arab Spring, same thing in Syria, same thing in some of these other third world countries, but when the youth in Britain, you know, when they riot, or people in America riot, well, then they're just hooligans and thugs.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, something that so many people do not know anything about was that 2 million man march.
Yeah, on September the 15th, 2012. Yes.
No one knows about it.
That got short shrift in the news, didn't it?
Yeah, it's just like, it blows me away. You know, I'll mention it to people, and they'll go, "What?
What?
That never happened."
And yet, see, well, the news media is just captured and taken over. That's all there is to it. There is no news media. There's only corporate advertising delivery systems.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
hey, speaking of, Ramon, I got to ask you: is Fukushima still spewing?
Yeah. I just heard some stuff on it, like, you know, spewing into the sea in vast amounts. Where actually there was like some seal pups that had washed up like several months ago, like a month ago, up in California, and they had very high dosage of radiation.
I think I noticed that, but those are over here. Those are in little bitty stories buried in the back of the newspaper and never
Yeah,
mentioned
same
on
as here.
television.
It's no different here. Like NHK they don't mention anything about it, and in American news they overdo what's really happening in places like like it's all going to hell in a handbasket, and then the important things they don't mention. Where here it's like it's the opposite. Everything's okay. Everything's just fine and dandy. Um,
Yeah.
so I find that
Unless it happens here, like the Gulf, the thing in the Gulf, it's still leaking, and they're still spraying Corexit in the Gulf.
Yeah.
But over here, it's like, oh, don't worry about it, folks. Everything's okay. They capped it a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's not true. Simply not true.
What I find hilarious is that people over here or Japanese are always telling me, don't eat so much beef, don't eat so much beef, it's not good for you. Well, I can agree with that, but then I'm like, well, don't eat so much fish, it's radioactive.
No joke. You'll glow in the dark. Man, I don't know. But see, again, we're just destroying the world. The Mediterranean is almost a dead sea. It's like on life support. It's like 3/4 dead, and you don't hear anything about that much. And now the Gulf's getting to be the same way. And how long is it going to be before all that spreads out into the Atlantic and it turns dead?
And we have
again, back to my question: how can anybody who has the faintest sense of responsibility to the human race allow that to continue? So it makes me wonder, are they even us?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are saying that they definitely are not. People who claim to have, those communications have contact. And, and most of those people who are making contact are talking about the rosier side of things, but there are a few out there that are actually, kind of, I don't know, giving a more balanced report, I guess, would be the right way to put it.
Well, we all know that daily those UFOs are coming and going. Got to be going somewhere. What are they doing? Who are they visiting?
Well,
I don't think they're all picking up people.
I feel like I've had a limited contact myself, telepathically, things that have come to me when during meditations and stuff like that have a sort of a signature that feels like it is, a non-local that's, feeding me something from somewhere else.
Well, do you feel like that's benevolent?
I do. I've actually probed with my mind and body, mind and spirit into the cosmos, looking for all those different entities out there, and I have sensed some more negative influences also, but it seems like the last probably from the middle of 2012 on, it just seems like that's thinning. Like there's hardly any of that out there anymore. And that report's coming. That same type of report are coming through a lot of the different channelers, for lack of a better word, contactees. That same type of information is coming through a lot of people that are saying that there's been a clamp down, so to say, on those guys who've been really muddying the waters down here, and that they're being pushed back, or they've been pushed back, and that now it's time for the other side of the coin to be shown, and things to start cleaning up and getting straightened out here. So that note of optimism, which take that for what it's worth, grain of salt, whatever, and it's something that has to be experienced. So.
Well, I guess it's like the old Chinese curse, and may you live in interesting times. Well, they're certainly interesting.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Ramon.
No, I was just gonna say. So should wrap this up or?
Yeah, Jim. So, what do you got coming up, Jim? I know you just released this book. Is that what's that, number 10?
Something like that. I don't know, about lost count. I just turned in a updated and expanded version of Crossfire, which is due out in September in time for the 50th anniversary, and it's got a lot of amazing stuff in there that you'll want to be sure and catch. None the least of which the fact that you can't even trust the Zapruder film anymore as an accurate depiction
Right.
of what happened in Dealey Plaza, because it's now beyond question that it was in the hands of the CIA's Photographic Interpretation Center that weekend before it was turned over to Time Life, which sat on it for 15 years before anybody could see it. So you can't even trust what that shows.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you speaking anywhere this spring, summer?
I'm going to be right now. I'm trying to make some plans to be at Contact in the Desert, and that's at Joshua Tree, California, in August. Let me see if I can find out what the date is on that. I'm also going to be at a conference on liberty and truth in Austin over July the 5th and 6th by my namesake, Tex Mars. It'd be good to meet him. We've talked a few times on telephone, but I've never actually met him in person.
Well, that reminds me really quick, Jim. With Kim Jong-un, why threaten Texas? Was it because you live there, or?
I tell you what, he's going to have a real problem. Okay, first off, the Contact in the Desert is on August the 9th and 10th. It sounds like it's going to be a really, really neat event. Yeah, let's talk about that young'un, or young-un. In Texas, we just call him the young'un. You know, what kind of idiots do they have over there in North Korea? They got this kid who was, never ran a successful business and never was even in the military, much less had any training or leadership experience, and they put him in charge of their whole military. And oh, wait a minute, we did the same thing with Obama, didn't we? Oh well, never mind.
Just a bit.
Never mind.
Oh,
I think they ought to take Young'un and Obama and strip them down to their underwear and put them out in the Sahara Desert and let them just duke it out.
there you go. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, when I was young, I always wonder why presidents didn't just duke it out, like, because my dad used to tell me, real man fight, it's like, why presidents just don't do that? Yeah.
That's right. Well, that's what they used to do back in the old days, back in the days of the Greeks or whatever, they'd line the armies up, and then either the generals or the leaders, or better yet, probably their designated fighters, their best fighters, they'd go out and they'd fight it out, and whichever one won, then the army would say, okay, we won, then okay, we lost. And that seems like a humane way to do it, and that way you don't cause bloodshed among all the rank and file guys who are simply trying to serve their country.
Those were days of honor and chivalry.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and man.
Well, thank you, and put me down for being that 111th monkey.
And something for you, for all our listeners out there, that just popped into my head that I think we're going to do. Let's say, tell you what, the first two emails that we get that tell us that you listen to Jim Mars on the 100th Monkey Radio and would really love a copy of our occult history, you just drop me an email, and I will, with your name, address, and I will send you a copy. So the first two, and
what's the email?
Send it to info@the100thmonkeyradio.com.
Wow, what a deal!
We just
quick.
love...
Let me call my mother. I think I owe her a copy.
All right.
No, families and relatives are exempt, I'm sure.
Yeah, families and relatives are exempt. The same, just that thing, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, because I have a pretty big family.
Good.
Which I think most of them don't even listen to the show anyway. But I could be surprised.
Well, guys, I certainly appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
All right, Jim. Hey, thanks a lot, and I want to thank everybody. Want to thank everybody for listening, and we love you guys. And condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Amen, brother. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I was going to say, the love you deny is the pain you carry.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. We will see you on the next show.
Change we wish to see in the world. Freedom's calling, I feel the fire that's deep inside us. Everybody wants change, but tell me who will guide us to the leaders that pass away. Put up your lighters. It's a beautiful struggle, but it cannot divide us. We're the ones that we've always been waiting for. See yourself in the mirror and open up the door. Walk through it and feel the love throughout your pores. Be the light, life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, standing up for truth. The only one to make change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loot. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you. Be the change
that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace,
aspire to be
someone who fights for the beliefs. Like Martin Luther King,
aspire to be
that love,
that light,
like Christ,
life
for the moment in need.
And if you believe
in Jehovah,
Allah,
Buddha,
Krishna,
it's love to me.
My soul yearns for peace in a world that's flooded with war. History's littered with body scar, trying to settle the score and maintain an archaic platform of power and greed. People fight for land out of survival and need. So I'm killing my television and I'm planting a seed to fill my head with knowledge that I'm seeing recede. Due to the media propaganda killing my creed. Oh, what don't kill me make me stronger, feeling straight when I bleed. Fight for interest and forwards attached to feet. They try to sell you anything in this world, nothing for free. Land, air, fire, and water, they keep up in the ante while the anti-proletariat hold the powers that be. But we keep fighting, surviving and thriving, recycling and rhyming. We constantly inclining, we see through the lying and prying. They tactically keep trying to keep you from asking the why.
Be the change that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace,
aspire to be
someone who fights for the beliefs. Like Martin Luther King,
aspire to be
that love,
that light,
like Christ, for the moment in need.
And if you believe
in Jehovah,
Allah,
Buddha,
Krishna,
it's love to me.
We find solutions, different possibilities, creating organizations like Aspire to Be, inspiring young minds to see, building life skills, nurturing creativity, fulfilling the youth's basic needs, listening actively, teaching the tools to succeed, positive role models, we plant the seed, the roots drink the water which feed the trees, someone help me, giving back is my responsibility.
Be the change that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace,
aspire to be
someone who fights for the beliefs. Like